Masterclass by Katie Day and Nadine Bailey. Katie Day is an American who has been overseas for over 30 years. She has a master's in children's literature from the UK and teaching and librarian degrees from Australia, earned long distance while living in Asia. Active in international school teacher librarian networks, she has been heavily involved in the development and management of the Red Dot Book Awards in Singapore and the Bangkok Book Awards in Thailand. She is currently working at Tanglin Trust School in Singapore and has also lived in Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and the UK. Online, she uses The Librarian Edge as her blog and Twitter handle. Nadine Bailey is an experienced teacher librarian. She has lived and worked in Asia for 16 years, the last 8 in the IB environment. She is now the middle school teacher librarian at the American School of Dubai. Nadine is passionate about diversity and enhancing a multicultural, multilingual environment. She's been involved in the NBA and NEVE Festival since its inception. Please welcome Katie and Nadine, friends.
We always give our slides away, and so there's a QR code and a short URL. You can get them now, but the very last slide, we'll put this up again, because we are reporting on a lot of research. We are teacher librarians, so we've done our research, and we give you all the articles so that you can later go back and read them yourself. We're going to do very quick summaries. And we need to click them. Okay, and then you also can find us online. Those are our Twitter things, and you can get to our blogs and whatever. So we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about the tension between print and pixels. We're going to talk about reading in the COVID years, and then we're going to get into digital reading in the educational environment. So when it comes to print and pixels, there are the alarmists and there are the proponents.
Can you do this if you are alarmist, and do this if you think it's great? Okay, alarmists.
Any alarmists? Back row, very alarmed, right? Okay, so these are some of the most famous books of the alarmists, and they're all excellent. I mean, Nicholas Carr was the first one with The Shallows who kind of sounded it. And I know so many people who have said it's worth rereading that book now that it's been 12 years. And if you don't know the Deep Work one by Cal Newport, he is great. He has so many good points about focus and attention and deep work. And then, of course, there's Marianne Wolf, who has been a NEVE, book club focus, and she is, again, very, very worth reading. Now, Marianne Wolf also, you can read if you don't want to read the whole books. She's done articles online and talking about the skimming as the new normal and the screen-based learning changing kids' brains. Now, the one thing to say about the skimming is Nadine and I will go, well, we skim all the time. Skimming is a really, really useful skill. It's, again, in the proportion, it's not black and white, but yeah, we all skim. It's not all bad. Now, this was an article that was in the New Yorker last week, which I thought was quite apropos, and it's reviewing a book by the Axios website founders. And Axios is a news website, and so journalists, they're summarizing the news, and they've written this book saying this is great, this is what everybody should be doing. And the New Yorker said it's basically how to write bluntly, tweet provocatively, and deploy emojis properly. But they're kind of dubious of it, and it reminds me when I have these secondary school students come up to me in the library and ask if we have a subscription to these online websites, like Blinkist is one of them, and they basically summarize a lot of the very contemporary, a lot of business and self-help books, and so you don't have to read the whole book. You can subscribe to Blinkist, and it will just give you the gist of it. And I kind of look at them and say, like, no, I'm not going to subscribe to that. I want you to read the whole book. There is a benefit to reading the whole book. But
I just want to interject there as well. You know, when we say we skim a lot and skim and scan a lot, we're a little bit like those birds who are flying over the ocean, right? And they fly and they fly and they fly. And then when they see the fish, they dive deep to go and get that fish. So that's the kind of skimming we're referring to. We don't only skim.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Okay, Nadine.
Okay, so when we were talking about this whole thing and collaborating together, I said to Katie, but that's Ray Bradbury. It's Fahrenheit 451. So if you'll remember, this book, written in 1953, one of the things that was happening in this society of the future was that everything was being abridged to accommodate short attention spans. Does that sound familiar? 1953. And he is foretelling the kind of thing, the kind of society we are in now. And then it reminded me of one of my middle schoolers' favorite books, The List, and The Last Word is the next one in the series, where, again, we have a dystopian society which wants to control its people by limiting their vocabulary, by limiting the number of words they have access to describe their realities. So this is 2014, so two very different epochs, but saying the same kind of thing. We can control people, control their thoughts by limiting the depth of what they're reading.
This is a book that I took out, and I took it out as an ebook from the National Library of Singapore, and because I thought, my goodness, we have to read this for our presentation, Why Digital Displays Cannot Replace Paper, The Cognitive Science of Media for Reading and Writing. And these two Japanese researchers who work for the Xerox Corporation have written this wonderful book, and they're just it's just a very charming, because they say the aim of this book is to clarify the greatness of reading and writing with paper. And that they started, though, they thought they were doing the book to be a proponent of digital media, because they said Xerox, of course, from the very beginning has been interested in it. But they said, contrary to our initial plan, this has become a book praising paper. And on the other hand, even though they praise paper, they're not totally negative about digital media. They say, in the future, we expect the emergence of digital media that will support reading and writing better than paper. But what they're saying is it's not here yet. And so we shouldn't be rushing into the digital until the digital can really replace the greatness of paper. And I have to say, I grew up in a paper mill town. My father worked at the paper mill. Everybody in town worked in the paper mill. And I grew up knowing a lot about paper. My father we made paper at home. I knew the different coatings. Anyway, so I just think this thing about paper is really personal to me. And I love this book, even though I love reading it on an ebook. So, in that book, they go through, and we talk about the affordances of a medium. And the affordances are what a medium allows you to do. And I'm sure if I sat here and I had said to you, think about what is better about a paper book and what is better about an ebook, you would have come up with a lot of these. So the paper, we are going to get into this embodied cognition, but you have spatial. You kind of know where you are in the book. You know how long the book is just by holding it. When you have an ebook, it's very hard to know. You don't have any sense. You can see the paper is very visible. You can flip through it, and you can scan for something far easier than on an ebook. You can read it, you can read it in the light, okay? We're gonna get into the screens, you can read it in the dark. It's easier to share a paper book, right? I can just hand it to you. The manipulability. This is going to come up, that the thing about paper is its physicality, and it's very, very real. We all know, it has smell, it has way more senses to it. You can carry it maybe more easily. Otherwise, whether you carry around your iPad or your phone, you do have to think about whether the battery's going to go down. And of course, it's so easy to scribble on paper. Do you want to go through some of the screen ones?
Okay, so the screen thing. Now, when I teach my students, when I give introductions to the library, of course I show them books and where to find everything, but I also remind them that they have my permission to use digital reading, because we all know students who have varying ways of accessing things. And I have quite a few students who are dyslexia or have a very bad relationship with reading or have difficulties in one way or another. And that's where the screen can help. For one thing, the ability to search inside. So, for example, when we were making this presentation, we could type in some keywords and just search the entire document and find those keywords. The scrolling option, just keep on scrolling down. I have a teacher at school who said to me, you know what? I have books on my own iPhone in the biggest possible font that there's only like 5 or 6 words per screen. And when I stop at the traffic light, I scroll up and read another few paragraphs, and then I put a little color to show where I am. And this is how I go through the traffic in Dubai. The text size adjustment, as we get older, it is great not to have to buy those big print books, but to be able to adjust the size. And also for our dyslexic students, they can adjust the background color. The cream color is more friendly for dyslexics. And also they can use a dyslexic font, which is very important for them. Our students, when I give them permission to read like that, I get wonderful feedback for them. They feel encouraged. They feel like I'm on their side. And as well, my learning support teachers come to me and they say, you know, when we went to that library session, the teacher said we are allowed to. So they really feel like they need our permission to access things in the way that's probably going to help their learning the best. Very easy to deliver, right? When I need a book, I just go to Overdrive, I buy it, and within like 10 minutes, the kids can access it. So that makes it very nice for easy and gratification. Storage, when you're going on holiday, I'm going back now, and I have, I think, about 40 kilos of books in my bag. I know whenever we go on holiday, my kids want to take a lot of books, or at least my daughter wanted to take a lot of books. It's a lot easier to travel with a Kindle or an iPad. Reading in the dark, and you can annotate pretty well as well, and keep all your annotations and access them very easily.
And I'm going to add one more affordance that ebooks gives us as librarians. Not only this, okay, we do control the ebook supply in our schools, so we can just go and press a button and it's there, which is magic. But the other thing is, when we have really great books in the library, we can get those books back in 3 weeks, guaranteed. Because when I book talk a book and somebody goes away, I mean, we don't charge fines. So there's some teachers that just keep books for months and months and months, and I'm like, I really, really want to book talk that to somebody else. Could you return it? But when it's an ebook, it just gets returned whether they like it or not, right? Because when you can put holds on books, anyway, for as librarians, we do like it.
And when I buy classroom library books, we'll buy 10 or 15 for the classroom, plus an audio book, plus an ebook. So students have multiple ways of accessing the text, and some of them want to read and listen, particularly the English language learners. They can find out how to pronounce things, they can look words up, they can jump onto the net to get some context.
So this is, and again, I think we can talk about the magic, like this is a new book, 2022. I read about it on Twitter, and it's open access. You can just go and read this right now, and it's all about embodied cognition. And the chapter that relates to reading and writing is chapter 7. So embodied cognition is this approach, says that the 4 E's, they call it the 4E approach to cognition, argues that cognition does not occur solely in the head, but is also embodied, embedded, enacted, or extended by way of, I like this, extracranial, outside your brain, processes and structures. And I'll summarize the article for you. They'll say, the role of our hands and the close connection between fine motor movement, perception, attention, and cognition can hardly be overstated. So they are also saying this embodied cognition, our hands, our bodies, the way we interact with books is still so, so, so important. Anyway, that's...
And I'll echo that for writing. When I was learning Chinese, just writing those characters stimulates the motor part of the brain, and it just makes the language a whole body thing. Right, reading in the COVID years. Okay, let's do this again. Who increased their reading during the COVID years? Who decreased it? And who stayed the same? Increase, yeah, okay, great. Who decreased their reading? Whose brains were petrified? Yeah, there were a lot of people whose brains were petrified. And who just stayed the same? Life is normal. Very few life is normal. Good on you. Okay, during the COVID years, many of us suddenly had to shift to have a massive reliance on e-books, e-reading. The whole tech community kind of gathered up and met the demand for people to carry on reading. Schools suddenly had to get subscriptions or buy e-books or audiobooks that they didn't have otherwise. And we had this whole deficit panic going on in the media where people were like, the students are going to be behind by a year, by 2 years, by 3 years. It's going to be a summer slump in exponential summer slump. And so then the question post-COVID is, was this real? So we'll see a little bit more about that. Melinda Gates from the Gates Foundation, dealing with people who have the least access to education and learning. She said it magnified every single inequity in society, like racism, gender inequality, and poverty. And we saw that in our beautiful book, Jamla Walks. The poorest of the poor were most affected. They didn't have access to electricity, let alone a device that they needed to power up and read from. On the other hand, we also had people who went into a psychosomatic kind of emotional shock with COVID, and they found it extremely difficult to focus. And there's been a lot of research about emotion and learning, and how when our brains are hijacked by intense emotion, we have no space for learning, we have no space for reading. So that's another thing that happened during the COVID years. In Singapore, these researchers did quite a bit of research during and post-COVID on students, and they said students still preferred print, even after having a period of a year, 2 years, where they had to transfer to ebooks and audio. They still came back with a preference to print. Then they did, in the US, they did a lot of studies, and here are 5 studies on reading which are quoted, and they found that most students, with the school closure, their reading was affected adversely. However, the Matthew effect. Does anyone know the Matthew effect? Anyone familiar with it? So it's a biblical reference where those who have get more and those who don't have lose more. And that effect has been applied to reading by a lot of researchers. And basically you have either upward positive spiral where you like reading, you get more practice, you become more automatic on reading, and because you're succeeding, it becomes more pleasurable, you grow your vocabulary, you have a good attitude to school, you read more, and then you go up and up and up and up. And then the negative spiral is the exact inverse. That you don't enjoy reading, you don't do reading, it's really hard for you, you struggle, you spend less time on it, you don't develop as fast as your peers, and you go all the way down. So
I was going to just say that it's, the Matthew effect too, is the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Yeah.
And that happened in real life with wealth as well during COVID years. The rich got richer and the poor got poorer. So the Literacy Trust in the UK, they found we had 2 societies. The ones who got richer in their reading and read more, had more time for reading, more time with their parents to do reading, and the others who really struggled and suffered. And this statistic came out in September of this year. 1 in 5 children in England do not own any books of their own. Any. 0.
Now, this study it's 2019, so a few years old, but it was so interesting, and it's the scholarly culture hypothesis, that just the mere presence of books in a home leads to later in life greater literacy, higher ability to cope with things. And it came up that, and it has to be by age 14. If by age 14 there are more than 80 physical books in your home, no matter that you have some fallow years or you don't like reading, you will be more competent later on in lifelong literacy. But it's interesting, there's no benefit over 350 books, even though, wouldn't it be nice, have hundreds and hundreds of books. And the thing is, you didn't have to read the books. The people didn't, just the mere presence of them. And what it seemed to instill in these adults was that you can go to books for information, that there are people out there, you understand that there are experts, you understand that books represent some kind of condensed expertise. And this helped you later in life to know where to go to get help, or with life.
Okay, digital reading and education. So a little bit about the three types of digital reading. We see ebooks, e-comics, PDFs, and audio.
So this is the affordances again, the pros and the cons. But in terms of the affordances, in particular in education, that a con can be that if you're not taught the affordances, if the kids, that you have ebooks in your school library, but you don't teach the kids how they can do text to audio so they can have it be read to them, if they don't understand how to make the font size bigger, if they don't understand, so if you do need a bit of training, because it's a very powerful tool, but requires instruction.
And you do need to give them permissions, particularly on audiobooks. So this was a little study done in Luxembourg, and what they did was they looked at science comics. So this is very interesting because we do have some authors who are specializing in science and illustrated science, and they found that digital comics helped cognitive learning outcomes. Having that visualization, having a format that students enjoyed, actually helped them with their learning.
So these are just some of the problems of the digital. Actually, students, my middle school students definitely prefer the print books to the e-books. And so it maybe was underutilized. I go in and look at my statistics because it costs us a lot. And as librarians, we also have a really big beef with the publishing industry as to this metered access or timed access, that we spend this money on the books and they say, so you only have it for a year, and then it disappears and you have to buy it again. And so it's a really big expense, and if the kids aren't reading it, we do question how many kids do we do want to provide it, but there's got to be a balance between our print budget and our digital budget. And I have to say too that because they can, the digital reading and the entertainment, my kids all have touch devices in my school. They walk around all day long. They don't have laptops, but they have, touch things like iPads. But when I say, can I read when I say, it's okay, reading time, and they said, can I read an ebook? And we have Sora, which is the school version of Overdrive. And I'd say, yes, but I have to position them where I can watch that they really are reading on Sora, because otherwise they've got their device open, and it's really easy that they're just gonna flip the screen and do something else. So that controlling that it's only ebook reading can be difficult.
Okay, so we both did a little survey in our schools about reading because we wanted to see if there's been any shift. A question we have, which I haven't answered yet, is do we need to make sure that we socialize and instruct students in the use to make it more effective? And I suspect that is true because in my school, I've only just joined, but I know the teachers spent a lot of time and effort with their students ensuring that they could use the devices and they knew how to find books and ask for books and everything. The general research is that they still prefer print reading. So that's worldwide. It is changing. It's not as high as it used to be, but it still is reading. They like to read the hard copy. If I give them both alternatives, they will always take the print.
And this researcher, Chin Ee Lo, who comes out of Singapore, she almost seems to specialize in doing research in this area. So her articles are worth following, and she has a brand new one out. Anyway, if you follow certain researchers, she's one to follow.
Okay, that's yours.
That's part of 80% of our students did prefer print, and I don't know, am I surprised by it? I think the alarmist half of my brain is worried that they would prefer reading on the screen. And so when they say that, I kind of look at them and go, oh, that's wonderful.
So I did a comprehensive survey with 255 of my students. And in fact, only 42% put books as their number one. And then the next thing after that was ebook, followed by audio, and then reading on the web. I'm suspecting that's the effect of getting really good instruction on that. The other thing is I definitely push audiobooks as a supplement to reading. So I'll be interested if that number changes over the next few years. Now we're going to do a little experiment. I have some wonderful helpers here. They're going to give you a piece of paper. There is some text on one side. There are 2 pages from a graphic novel on the other side. We're going to play an audio clip for you, and we're going to let you scan a QR code, so you'll need your devices so you can read some text on your telephone or your device. So we're going to give you a little bit of time to read each. I would say read carefully because we're going to be giving you a little Kahoot.
There's going to be a quiz at the end.
There's going to be a quiz to see how much you remember. So after you've read this and listened and read on your device, we're going to take your pieces of paper back and we're going to give you a little quiz. So read.
So start with the print.
Start with the print.
And the graphic.
Read deeply.
Read deeply, and know there's going to be a quiz at the end, and then we will be playing you the audio and letting you read on your
And
phones.
our lovely helpers will also, if you have any struggles with the digital side of things, just put up your hands and they'll come and help you.
Okay. Nice. So we can give them.
We're going to give you the text to read on a mobile device.
Dear Kitty, yesterday I had a horrible fright. At 8 o'clock the doorbell suddenly rang. All I could think of was that someone was coming to get us. You know who I mean. But I calmed down when everybody swore it must have been either pranksters or the postman. The days here are very quiet. Mr. Levinsorn, a little Jewish chemist, is doing some experiments for Mr. Kugler in the kitchen. Since he's familiar with the entire building, we're in constant dread that he'll take it into his head to go and have a look at what used to be the laboratory. We're as still as baby mice. Who would have guessed 3 months ago that Quicksilver Anne would have to sit so quietly for hours on end, and what's more, that she could? Mrs. Van Daan's birthday was the 29th. Though we didn't have a large celebration, she was showered with flowers, simple gifts, and good food. Apparently, the red carnations from her spouse are a family tradition. Let me pause a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Daan and tell you that her attempts to flirt with father are a constant source of irritation to me. She pats him on the cheek and head, pulls up her skirt into me.
Okay,
She pats him on the...
that's all you need to know, but we're going to play it
Fright.
again, just because the first time you may not have been used to the accent and the words, okay? So we're going to play that minute again for you.
Thursday, the 1st of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, yesterday I had a horrible fright. At 8 o'clock the doorbell suddenly rang. All I could think of was that someone was coming to get us. You know who I mean. But I calmed down when everybody swore it must have been either pranksters or the postman. The days here are very quiet. Mr. Levinsorn, a little Jewish chemist, is doing some experiments for Mr. Kugler in the kitchen. Since he's familiar with the entire building, we're in constant dread that he'll take it into his head to go and have a look at what used to be the laboratory. We're as still as baby mice. Who would have guessed 3 months ago that Quicksilver Anne would have to sit so quietly for hours on end, and what's more, that she could? Mrs. Van Daan's birthday was the 29th. Though we didn't have a large celebration, she was showered with flowers, simple gifts, and good food. Apparently, the red carnations from her spouse are a family tradition. Let me pause a moment on the subject of Mrs. Van Daan and tell you that her attempts to flirt...
Right, now we're going to quiz you. Now, it's not an objective to shame anybody, so feel free just to use a pseudonym for your name. We just want to see how your 4 reading experiences compared. There are going to be 3 questions on each part of the text. So let's just get the Kahoot slide up. Yeah. So what you need to do is just scan this code or go to kahoot.it and put in the game pin. It will then ask you for your name. Feel free to call yourself Kitten 2 or Chair 4, whatever you want to do, okay? If you want, you can come a little bit closer and again, put up your hand if you're struggling and one of our volunteers will come and help you. The code is still there. Okay, how many have we got? 35, 34?
Again, if you're having trouble getting it, just put your hand up and one of the student volunteers will come and help sort you out.
Our students adore Kahoot. If you want to ever get them excited, they just, when they hear the Kahoot music starting, they're all like, oh, are we going to do a Kahoot? Are we going to do a Kahoot? Make sure you do it. Well done. Oh, we have a contender. Yay, well done. Okay. 1942. Oh, it's close. You can either write it out or just put the number. Oh, it's not over till it's over. This is the audio. Who believed Anne could ever sit still? Ooh, we've got a contender. '29th. Ooh, we have someone flaming ahead. What did she receive? It was a family tradition. She received red carnations from her spouse. Okay, 2 more questions. Trick question. Butter wasn't eliminated, they just got 1 less ration. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's all right. 10, as somebody here in the audience very correctly was shouting. Okay, Nifan, you are number 1. Nesh is number 3. Nesh is number 2, and number 1 is SS. Congratulations, 9 out of 12. Was that hard, easy? Okay, let's switch back to the presentation and then we'll just do our conclusion quickly. Hope you enjoyed that. Okay, we're a little over our time. We're going to jump to our slides and quickly go to our conclusion. Right, conclusion. We cannot ignore the future. It's going to happen whatever we do. There is this new ecology, and some of our capabilities may decline, but they will be replaced by others. There is a lot of social impact of digital, and as we learned yesterday, reading is a social activity. Online books, e-books and audiobooks are still a small percentage in India, as we learned from this latest report. Pratham Storyweaver is an exception to this. They're making great progress. And finally,
we just wanted to say that denial is not a strategy. So there are no digital natives everybody needs instruction and guidance on how to get the most out of this, the most out of print and pixels, and of course, it's a both rather than an either-or situation. And then we just have our slides at the end, so you can go back later and read some of those reports and the research. Thank you very much.
Thank you.